okay? That you have to volunteer. You have to go out into your community, not another country, in your community. Find the elders and read to them. Find the young people who are homeless and feed them and clothe them. In fact, that's one of the vows.
Hello, my name is Kevin Lopez, and this is my Qigong teacher, Dr. Love. And I've been practicing Hatha Yoga for about 5 years. I've taught it for about a year. And the past half of the year, I've been practicing Qigong under Dr. Love's tutelage. So I have a few questions for Dr. Love about the relationship between Hatha Yoga and Qigong. So, Dr. Love, what do you see as the similarities and the differences between Qigong and Hatha Yoga?
Okay, so Hatha Yoga is one of the 8 methods of Ashtanga Yoga. And the purpose of Hatha Yoga is to make your body stronger so that you can sit in meditation longer. Whereas Qigong is the entire scope of energy movement, energy healing, energy psychology. So we divide Qigong into martial Qigong, medical Qigong, and spiritual Qigong. So we have psychosomatic, psycho-emotional, psycho-spiritual. Qigong is more than the exercise, so it's more than Hatha Yoga. Qigong is the oxygenation of the blood. So as we do breathing exercises, we increase the amount of oxygen in the blood, which obviously purifies the blood. But then there's the intention to move the blood. So I can move it into my arms, I can move it into my legs, I can move it into my breath, I can move it into my hands. So with various movements, I can increase the circulation of blood and oxygenated blood. Now, the magic of Qigong that's different from yoga is that it's based on rotation of the joints.
Right.
So there are rotational joint movements where yoga is perceived as being primarily stretching. Now, it does strengthen the joint, it does strengthen the bones, it does strengthen the body. But after 25 years of yoga, there's a strong possibility you're going to injure your shoulder, your elbow, your wrist,
right,
and even your hips. Whereas in Qigong, there's minimal possibility of any injury because you're always strengthening the entire joint. And so there's no pressure at one particular point.
So my next question then is, since you are quite the scholar with history, what is your understanding of the interaction between Hatha Yoga in India and in Tibet and Qigong in China, especially say via the Silk Road and so forth?
Okay, so the Silk Road starts in China, and the Chinese government, or the king, the emperor, what have you, has perfected this method of manufacturing silk. Right. And so they developed this elaborate trading system from east to west to trade silk. Now, as silk is going one way, then there's goods and services going the other way. So it's a two-way street. So from ancient Egypt to Constantinople, which is it's in Turkey, but was the Byzantine Empire, then the Persian Empire, and then it goes through Afghanistan, and then it gets to Tibet, and then from Tibet it goes to China, and then down into India. So there's this elaborate system of trade. Now, Buddhism, from the 5th century BC, slowly spread through Central Asia. And Buddhism went first went from India to Afghanistan, and then Afghanistan to Tibet, and then from Tibet to China. So it's a really convoluted way of thinking of it, because we really think it's the other way around. We think Buddhism went from India to China to Tibet, when it was actually India, Afghanistan, Tibet,
Right.
and then into China. So it's a really strange thing. Now, as a scholar, I'm looking at a particular saint whose name is Padampa Sangye, who is from South India, but he lived in Tibet for 13 years before he went to China. And that particular saint, his name is also Bodhidharma. Okay? So Bodhi refers to the fruit of the Bodhi tree that dropped down that gave Buddha his enlightenment. Okay? And then Dharma is the teaching. So Bodhidharma is not an actual name, it's just the representation of the knowledge that he carried, that his actual name was Padampa Sangye. And being from South India, he was very tall and dark-skinned. And in Tibet, they have several paintings of him, all with very dark skin. And this is the guy who brought it to China. Now, bear with me 1 second. As the knowledge came, and then the teacher died, how do you refresh the knowledge? How do you upgrade the knowledge? So you're going to reach back to India to get more information about Buddhism.
Right.
Now, during this time of the Silk Road, there was a blockage of information when the Muslims controlled the Silk Road. There was another blockage of information when the Mongolians controlled the Silk Road. So at one point, there's an active flow of information directly from India to China, and then it gets cut, and there's no information. So for about 150, 200 years, the information in Tibet had to develop on its own without any refresh of the teachings. So yoga came to Tibet and just stayed. And then yoga became part of Buddhism. So bear with me. Ashtanga yoga is a methodology of developing union of mind and body. The Hatha was only one part of that. Now, Padampa Sangye, or Bodhidharma, for lack of more information, meditated for 9 years. And during those 9 years, he noticed that the monks were very weak. So he developed something called 18 Buddha palm exercises to make the monks stronger. And that became known as Qigong, when in actuality it was yoga. Okay?
Okay.
So the point of yoga is not to just practice Hatha, but there's 12 precepts in Buddhism, and it's all about the individual achieving nirvana or samsara or enlightenment, for lack of a better term. Now, Chan Buddhism developed when Padampa brought Buddhism to Tibet. And in Tibet, they decided they were going to find joy as opposed to self-denial and contemplation. They were going to go out and do good works. So Chan Buddhism took the 12 precepts, cut it down to 5. No stealing, lying, murder, no intoxication, and no sexual misconduct. Now, of course, that gets misinterpreted as no sex and no drinking, but there's a difference between drinking and intoxication. And there's a difference between sex and misconduct in sex. Okay? So he takes those, and then he said you must be of good cheer, which means you have to carry the inner smile, and you have to reach out and help people. You have to defend the weak and protect the innocent. So in effect, he mixed Taoism with Buddhism, and that became Chan. And yoga became Qigong. but Qigong is actually Taoist yoga. Okay?
Right.
So we have Buddha yoga and we have Tao yoga, which in China became Qigong.
Okay.
So I hope that clarifies some of the confusion that people have about Qigong versus yoga.
I'm thinking a lot about the present situation and that we have these different traditions of cultivating the body and the mind. Qigong, lineages from China, and Hatha Yoga from India and Tibet. How do you envision these two traditions developing side by side?
Well, as the medicine teacher, Yao Shifo, my patron saint is the medicine Buddha from Tibet. The early adopters of medical Qigong was the Shaolin Temple. So they mixed the medicine with the martial arts, which is a logical thing because there's injuries in training and there's injuries in battle and combat. So the Tibetan Buddhists developed a methodology which then they shared with the Shaolin monks, and then that moved into China. So Chinese medicine is based upon Tibetan Buddhist medicine. Wow, what a shocker, because we're thinking it goes from China to Tibet, and then when we do the history research, we find out it was the other way around. Now, here's the thing, moving forward, American yoga has to add a medical component to it.
Right, yes.
And I am gladly volunteering to put myself in that position to educate modern yogis about the medicine that yoga already contains. So it's not like I'm going to teach you something foreign. I'm going to take what you already know and show you the medical aspect of that. Okay? So there's acupressure, there's yoga dance, and then the three bandhas, the Mula Bandha, Arya Bandha,
it's Jalandhara Bandha.
Jalandhara Bandha,
and
that one.
Oh
right?
Gosh, wow! I'm not coming up with it right now. Uddiyana Bandha.
Uddiyana Bandha.
Yes,
okay.
Right.
So what Qigong is going to do is start with that knowledge and just fine tune it. You know, upgrade it. So that's why I want to bring the medicine into yoga. And then I want to take yogis and show them that Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga is definitely important to add to your yoga practice.
Right.
Okay? That you have to volunteer. You have to go out into your community, not another country, in your community. Find the elders and read to them. Find the young people who are homeless and feed them and clothe them. In fact, that's one of the vows of the medicine Buddha, is to clothe the cold, feed the hungry, and help women who have been abused by men. So that kind of blew my mind when I read that, because that implies that men have been abusing women for thousands of years. It's not a recent, this Me Too thing is not a recent thing. It's been going on for a couple thousand years.
Right.
Okay? So we have to educate men to be better men. And we have to help women who've been abused by men. And then you have to teach women how to be better mothers to their sons, so that sons don't grow up to become abusers of women. So moving forward, there's got to be a lot of educational interaction between medical Qigong and yoga, and then we can call it yoga medicine.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to learning more about yoga as medicine, and as we interact and we share more knowledge, and I learn more from you than you're learning from me. So thanks for this interview. Yeah, thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Dr. Love from the Blue Dragon Qigong Academy. Remember, what you do today affects your health 20 years from now. Blue Dragon.
Blue Dragon.
Qigong.
Qigong.